All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. We're really pleased that you're able to attend the webinar here to learn about the University of Wollongong School of Medicine. I clicked that prematurely, excuse me. I'm Andrew Wingfield, and I work for GlobaLinks Learning Abroad, and we are the North American recruitment representatives for the University of Wollongong, and I'll explain a little bit of that in a moment. And with me is Professor Lyndall Parker-Newland and Ms. Katie Piper, also that are visiting us from Australia, from the University of Wollongong's Medical School.
Hi everyone, welcome aboard. Hello.
So I'm going to start off and tell you a little bit about GlobaLinks Learning Abroad and how we work with the University of Wollongong, and then the primary focus of this presentation will be some very specific information about the program at Wollongong and what distinguishes them. So to begin with, we represent a number of university partners in the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. We've been doing this for a number of years. We provide application services to students, so if you have questions about how to apply or about getting your visa or any of the sundry things that you can think of that make going abroad a bit more complicated than staying at home in the States or Canada for med school, that's why we exist. We're on the same side of the world as you. We have a toll-free number that you're able to call. And so we exist to be able to provide excellent customer service to students that are looking to do a degree overseas and to deliver you safely into the good care of our university partners like the University of Wollongong. And because of the university support us, we're able to offer all of our services free of charge to students. So that's a really nice value for you. So this goes over a bit more of some of the things that we provide for students. We're able to certify your official transcripts, which is a nice service, so you only have to submit one set. We can give you good information about questions that you have about specific programs, connect you with resources both at the universities we represent and other accrediting bodies for your information. Because we collect all the papers for your application in-house. Once your application is complete, we send it over as a complete item, and so we're often able to secure quicker admissions decisions for students because our university partners know that an application they receive from us is going to be complete and screened. And the final advantage that you receive is the in-country orientation that we provide. So we call this our Bridging Cultures Orientation Program. This is, again, free of charge to you if you choose to participate in it. In Australia, you will get to start in Cairns, which is in the far north, so quite a ways from Wollongong. It's a great way for you to be able to see a different part of the country. You get to go out on the Great Barrier Reef and meet other students that are coming from North America to study in Australia. It's chock full of sightseeing and networking opportunities, but also with a lot of breakout sessions that exist to be able to tell you a bit about the country and the history and the culture of Australia, how to get around, how to get your cell phone up and going, using health insurance, all of those things to help you be more successful in day-to-day life, and also to let you know a little bit about the Australian higher ed system and what you can expect so that you can be a successful student. Most students find that this is a big highlight of their trip and a way that they're able to really get to know other students, get to know the support staff from GlobaLinks before they begin their studies at a university. And with that said, I will turn it over now to Professor Parker-Newland, and she will tell you all about the Graduate School of Medicine at the University of Wollongong.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for dialing in today. Basically, I've got a number of slides to show you to talk a bit about our program, about our university, about what makes us unique, and why you might be interested in our program. And I think we start the picture of a bunch of our smiling medical students, which is probably quite appropriate. They're a diverse group, and one of those students in that photograph, the blonde lady up the back, Michelle Durst, is actually Canadian, so it's a very appropriate slide, I think. What that also tells you is how small our school is, in that by looking at a random photo of our medical students, I know who they are and where they're from, and we'll talk more about the size of our school later. Andrew has kindly already introduced us. The other person who I will introduce who's not here at the moment is Sal Sanzoni, and Sal is actually our Deputy Chair of Admissions, and poor Sal is holding the fort back in Australia while Katie and I swan it here across the Atlantic. So we got the lucky ones, we got the trip. So what we're going to talk about today is our university, about the Graduate School of Medicine, our program, about our campuses and facilities, about the process to actually apply and be selected, and then obviously we've got space for any questions you may have that Katie or Andrew or I can answer. So let's talk a little bit about the University of Wollongong. You may know well about us or you may not. We are based in the southeastern corner of Australia in New South Wales. So what you can see there in the top left-hand slide is a picture of Australia where New South Wales is based, and the right shows you New South Wales. And this is where our campuses are. Now, we have two main campuses where we teach medicine, which is a campus in Wollongong and a campus in Shoalhaven, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about them. To give you a bit of a space and spatial orientation, we're about an hour south of Sydney. You'll notice there are a range of other campuses which are actually up and down the New South Wales coast, and just for fun there's one in Dubai. And Katie and I keep offering to go there and set up a medical school in Dubai. The Dean hasn't sent us yet, but we can live in hope. We'll make it happen. The other thing that's important if you are not aware of the University of Wollongong is that we're a relatively small regional university. Young as universities go, the university is about 50 years old, but we actually fight above our weight as far as rankings. We're ranked in the top 2% of universities in the world. We're actually globally ranked, and we're ranked as one of Australia's best modern universities and one of the best young universities in the world. And these rankings occur in areas of research productivity, of student satisfaction, and of graduate outcomes. And I think one of the exciting things about our university is that the focus has been on the graduate experience. So where we are ranked at the highest is actually usually in teaching quality and in student experience. So I think that's important for you to know, is that we're not just a research machine. A student experience is very important. And this is across the university and existed before the medical school came along. So about the medical school. We're a relatively new school, having opened in 2007. And that's actually a very exciting thing and a positive thing. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is in a moment. Up front, I think our vision is important. And the medical school aims to lead the development and implementation of strategies that will address shortages of medical practitioners in regional, rural and remote Australia. And we'll talk about why that's important in a moment. But also the second part of our vision is for us to achieve national and international status as a leader in medical education. And those things are already happening. We have students all over the world that are working, students all over Australia that are working as well, but we have more students serving remote and rural communities than most other medical schools. And the other thing that's important is that we're being recognised as innovators in education because of the quality of our teaching and our unique curriculum. And in fact, while I'm here in Canada, myself and the Dean will be presenting a paper in Ottawa at the Canadian Medical Education Conference about some of the things that we do, and that's happening with our academics all over the world. And I think that's important. So an overview. We are a graduate entry program, so our students all have to have a primary bachelor's degree. We have 86 students in our class. That makes us one of the smallest medical schools in Australia, and that's actually quite an exciting positive. I mentioned on the first slide being able to recognise Michelle immediately. And that's just not some special creepy trick I have with knowing all the students. It's a nature of how small the program is and how close the student and staff relationship is. We often say jokingly to applicants, if you want to be anonymous and another face in the crowd, don't come to Wollongong. This is a program where people will know and support you throughout your studies. We have a distributed campus delivery model, and what we mean by that is to start with, we teach our students on 2 campuses, then hubs, and then up to 12 or 13 different placements all across New South Wales, and finally in our last part of the campus across the world. What this means is our students get a variety of experiences in different hospitals, in different communities, in different cities. They understand different systems. They become more flexible and adaptable as doctors and more autonomous and independent as students. And we'll talk about that in detail later. Our program has very early clinical contact, and we believe that's very important. To give you an idea, our students will actually meet their first patient on their first day of medical school. That will actually occur in a controlled environment, of course. Our students will be in the hospitals in week 6 of medical school, because the more experience you have with patients, the better doctor you'll be. And we have what we call a hybrid model. You probably, if you're looking at medical school, have read a lot about problem-based learning courses, about traditional courses. We're a hybrid model. Our medical school has a case-based learning core throughout the program, but that doesn't mean that you don't have lectures. You certainly do. You have lectures, you have small group sessions, large group sessions, wet lab anatomy, a range of activities, which means it suits a range of learners and we get the best of all educational models. I think the educational philosophy of the program is really important. Just when you're looking at a medical school, all Australian medical schools graduate great doctors, and I think it's important to know that the quality of the country is so high. Why would you choose Wollongong? I think it's about educational fit. Do we have a philosophy that appeals to you? Do you think we're a good fit for what you want to be when it comes to being a doctor? We recognise that students are adult learners and that they all bring a different experience and a range of backgrounds, both educational and life backgrounds, into the program. And that's actually a valuable addition to our course. We want our students to be actively engaged with learning, but we actually want the clinical context to drive their learning. I don't want our students to be learning chapter 6 of the textbook because Lyndall told them so. We want them to be wanting to solve the problem of what's wrong with this patient, to have that desire to find the answers. We also want our students to be learning in context and to actually master electronic teaching methods, to be using technology in its best way to learn. We know that students need to have lifelong learning skills because they'll be learning for the rest of their lives. And we need our students to be clinically competent. Now, I mentioned the early clinical contact. We believe that's because you actually need a lot of time and a lot of experience, a lot of support and correction to actually be a good doctor. And the best way to do that is to start early. And so in this slide, for example, you can see Dr. Helen Reinert, one of our clinical skills tutors, working with a group of students in our clinical skills centre, where they're actually getting guided, careful exposure on how to actually treat patients and examine and take histories from patients. And we believe that's one of the strengths of our program. To be a good doctor and make good decisions requires clinical problem solving. It means you need to not only have the grasp of science, but you need to practice that skill of making clinical decisions. It needs rehearsal and guidance as well. It's not just something you can learn by osmosis. And so certainly that art of how to make a good clinical decision is something that's explicitly taught in our program. And we believe very strongly that the attitudinal and behavioural aspects of clinical care are important. Medicine is a vocation. It's a profession that requires a certain level of professionalism. It requires compassion and empathy and the ability to look after yourself as well as other people, which is also very important to our program. And again, I mentioned earlier our students studying in a range of environments, and that means that students need to be adaptable and be able to cope with diverse learning environments, and that's only an asset. So in summary, we have a spiral integrated curriculum, which is based around a case-based learning core. We have a heavy focus on clinical skills in the centres and also in placements. We have competency-based assessment. Now, that may be a foreign term to you. What that actually means is that we are assessing your ability to do stuff, not just know stuff, from the very beginning. And that's very important for your clinical skill. We use modern technology throughout our teaching. This is a modern program and a newly developed program, and I think you will appreciate that, being people that have grown up in that environment. We have a community focus and we have a lot of primary care exposure, but that doesn't mean we only make primary care physicians or family physicians. About 99% of all medical care around the world actually happens outside of the hospital system. Only a very small proportion of people get sick enough to go to hospital. And if you only ever learn in a hospital environment, you miss all those clinical decisions. So our students do hospital medicine, but they also do a lot of primary care medicine. That might be family medicine, emergency medicine, medicine in environments where it's not all within a high-science teaching hospital. And that actually allows our students to be part of many, many different medical decisions that may not be accessible in other medical schools. And the final point on here I think is important is mentorship. This is a small program, as I said, and that allows us to support and nurture our students, to train them to be able to reflect and to be self-critical, to support themselves, each other, and for us to support them to be the best doctor they can be. I mentioned an integrated case-based curriculum, and I might just take a moment to actually explain what that means. In phase 1 of the program, which is the first 18 months, in some medical schools you may learn physiology as one subject, anatomy as another subject, biochemistry as a separate subject. We don't learn like that. We learn around patients. So you may meet a patient by the name of John who has chest pain, and I've given you an example of a patient here. In our program in phase 1, we will actually bring that patient who is a real live breathing human being in to meet our class, and with the students, we will work through what might be going on. The students will be helping us decide what questions to ask and helping determine what tests we might order to try and figure out what's wrong with John. This happens from the very first day. So on the very first day of medical school, before you've learned anything else, our students have to work out how to take a history from a sick patient, because that's how important those fundamental skills are. But that's not all they do. So while they're taking the history, meeting the patient and working through the case, in the background will occur all sorts of other learning environments and experiences related to that case. So during anatomy that week, they'll be learning about the heart. They might have clinical demonstrations on the heart rhythm. They'll have good old normal science lectures, which might be on the electrophysiology of the heart. They'll have a hospital placement or a GP placement where they'll actually learn to take a history from a patient with chest pain. And in the Clinical Skills Centre, they'll be practicing those skills. We might be talking about the law and ethics of death and dying, and even the professionalism of dealing with patients with life-threatening disease. Everything in that 2 weeks will be about working out what's wrong with John, sorting out from the basic molecular level to the behavioural science level how to manage John. So when you learn that, it's all learned in one context. It's all, the networks have been made in your head, so the next time you see a patient with chest pain, you don't have to try and remember anatomy from one subject and physiology from another, because we've taught it to you in context. That's what we mean by an integrated curriculum, and it is a relatively modern way of teaching, but we believe it actually helps our students learn more content and more relevant content in a shorter period of time. So there are 4 vertical themes that run through the program. We have 4 phases in the course, and it would be logical to have each of those being a year, but it doesn't quite work that way. So phase 1 is actually 18 months long, and then phase 2 and 3 are a year, and phase 4 is just 6 months. But there are 4 parts of the program, and they each signify a distinction in learning. But throughout those 4 phases are the 4 themes of medical sciences, clinical competency, personal and professional development, and research and critical analysis. And those 4 themes are woven throughout the program. I'd already mentioned it's an integrated course. Because of that, you won't necessarily always see a separate test on this or a separate lecture on that, but they're the fundamental underpinnings of our course. I'd mentioned the phases, and this probably is a good opportunity to explain to you what I mean by that. So phase 1 is the first 18 months of the program, and it's our integrated foundations. Our students learn the traditional clinical medicine that in an older program would be the preclinical period, but that's not all they're doing. They're learning all of the foundation skills, foundation communication skills, foundation clinical skills, examining patients, foundation research skills. All of the things that we think they're going to need to see patients, we try and give the vast majority in that first 18 months. This is quicker than many medical schools. So we'll actually, it is a quite intense 18-month period, because in many medical schools this would cover 2 to 2.5 years. But it allows us to give our students a far greater clinical exposure. Oops, I just went backwards. Let's go forwards. Now, just to give you an idea, those phase 1 placements, all of our students in that first 18 months are split between Wollongong campus and the Shoalhaven campus, which is in Nowra, and you can see the little red stars where those 2 places are. I've put a little car up there just to remind me. One of the things about a program like ours, which is flexible and adaptable, it's important to think about transport. For most students in our program, their own transport is really important. Basically, if you are a phase 1 student on the Wollongong campus and you live near the public bus route, you probably can get away without your own transport, maybe for the first year. After that, and certainly for any student on Shoalhaven, but after that for any student, students will need a car or a motorbike or something like that. Because a number of our placements occur in rural communities, these are areas that don't necessarily have adequate public transport. So it's just something to think about when you're thinking about the budget and everything else, is to think about your own wheels. Now phase 2 is the traditional hospital clerkship rotations that you'd have in any medical school. And so in our phase 2 program, they are the usual specialties: medicine, surgery, anaesthetics, obstetrics, paediatrics, psychiatry. And we still have case-based learning though, and it's running electronically through the themes. So while the students are moving from hospital to hospital, there's still cases tying all their book learning together. Our phase 2 rotations occur in Wollongong and Shoalhaven as before, but also in the Southern Highlands, which is another region pretty close by. And what this means is we have a large tertiary teaching hospital in Wollongong, we have a regional district hospital in Shoalhaven, and we have a small hospital in the Southern Highlands. By the students rotating, they get to see how even something like a heart attack would be treated differently in 3 different hospitals with 3 different lots of access. So at the very beginning, we're actually showing the students different opportunities depending on where they may work. Phase 3 is where life gets really interesting, and this is actually one of the unique parts of our program. In Phase 3, our students spend an extended integrated placement in a rural or regional community. Now, they're actually based in general practice in family medicine, but that's not what they're learning in its entirety. Family medicine is their home base, but they're actually looking at all sorts of medical care that occurs in that community. They'll be working in the emergency department, they'll be working in the labour ward, they may be doing outreach with mental health team. Depending on where they are, and I'll show you a map in a moment of how scattered our students are, there are all sorts of other opportunities. Some of the students are doing some justice health because there's a prison nearby. Some of our students have worked with the Royal Flying Doctor Service, depending on where they are. It's a range of experiences, but what they get to do is immerse themselves in a community and see how the health of that community works. What's unique about this program is it gives students the opportunity to see the things that happen outside of the hospital, to be enmeshed in a community, to actually get continuity of care. As a medical student, you notoriously meet a patient and never see them again. These students get to follow patients over a 12-month period and get to understand and be involved in extended periods of care. But the other reason it's really exciting is our students get autonomy because they're with the one lot of clinicians for a year who get to learn their skills and their weaknesses and support them. Our students develop a lot of skills beyond which they would have if they were just rotating through hospitals every few weeks, as they do in Phase 2 and most other medical schools. So our students actually develop a lot of confidence, and it's where they really make the emotional transition, I guess, from being a student to being a practitioner. The other interesting thing is because our students are generally in smaller communities, there's a lot less competition. If you're in a major teaching hospital and if you've ever watched any of those medical dramas and there's 27 medical students following the specialist around, they don't get a lot of time or care. In this situation, the students are spending time one-on-one with their preceptor. There is usually no other medical students around, or only 1 or 2 other medical students around, so they get to do a whole lot more. And I think all of that's really important for teaching. It's where life gets interesting geographically as well. Our students in Phase 3 are scattered all over New South Wales. To give you an idea of scale, you'll see where it says the Illawarra region, that's Wollongong, on the lower right of the slide. If you go up to the top left where it says Broken Hill and there's a big red road, that's our most remote placement, and it's probably about 14 hours drive between those 2 sites. So this is a long way, and it is an amazing opportunity for our students. And there's a whole lot of other placements in between. But it means that it's a challenge, but it's a really exciting challenge, particularly for international students, because Australia is such a diverse country, and they get to see something quite different and experience immersion in a community. And finally, Phase 4 comes around, and Phase 4 is our capstone part of the program, where we really get to polish the clinical skills of our students and get them ready to be residents. And this is actually quite exciting because the students don't have exams at this point. They've actually finished their exams. They can just focus on being the best clinical doctors they can be. So in Phase 4, our students actually do 3 rotations. One is elective, which can be anything, anywhere in the world. And our students, about 70% of our students actually travel overseas. And we've had students doing surgery in South America, doing public health in Asia, studying infectious diseases in London, working with Aboriginal communities in Central Australia. Basically, as long as it's educationally valuable and as long as it's safe, the sky's the limit on what you want to do. There's also a selective rotation where our students focus on a particular specialty of interest. And then the final rotation is called PRINT, which stands for pre-internship or pre-residency. And it's where our students are shadowing junior doctors and learning those day-to-day skills that help a junior doctor survive. This is a really unique part of the course because it allows our students to be absolutely ready for starting their residency training in the new year. Now, for our North American students, we strongly encourage them to do the elective, at the very least, if not all 3 rotations at home in Canada or the US. What that allows our students is about a 5-month experience with the North American health system. It allows them to get the letters that they need to try and be competitive for a residency match. And certainly for the US students, it allows them to do the USMLE, the clinical skills part of the exam while they're here in the country. So it all fits together quite well prior to the residency match to do that at home. Excuse me. So what we're aiming for is important. We're aiming our students to be expert, knowledgeable clinicians and ready to work in all branches of medicine. We want them to practice patient-centred, evidence-based and cost-effective care, and to be reflective practitioners, to be self-correcting and constantly thinking about how better they can be. We want our students to graduate to be caring, empathic and culturally appropriate doctors, skilled communicators that work in teams, and to be socially responsible, committed to reducing inequality of care, particularly with our focus on rural Australia, but really this is a broad focus that we want students to have a social conscience and be aware of some of the inequalities of healthcare and underserved communities worldwide. So I've mentioned our campuses a couple of times, and I think it might be important just to explain that a little bit more. We have 2 main campuses which we deliver across for phase 1, which is Wollongong and Shoalhaven. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a drink, stop coughing. And one of our campuses is based in Wollongong, and the other is about 90 kilometres to the south in the regional town of Nowra, and I'll talk about them in detail. Students from both campuses enjoy new purpose-built facilities. We've got great access to resources, and it's a small collegiate environment, which I think is important to know. So for each student intake, I mentioned we have a cohort of around 86 students. Generally around 32 are based at the Shoalhaven campus, which is in Nowra, and about 54 students are based on the Wollongong campus. Now, all the students are together 1 day a week, but for 4 days a week our students are actually in very small classes. So again, this is a really personal experience. As an international student, you can be placed on either campus, and certainly every year some students prefer one or the other depending on their previous experience, depending on whether they like to be in a smaller or a larger community, and depending on how much they really want to immerse in the Australian culture. So starting with Wollongong, it's about 80 kilometres south of Sydney, and it's a population of 292,000. We're currently in Denver, Colorado, and it's about the same size as Denver. The Wollongong campus is the main campus of the University of Wollongong and has around 24,000 students on campus. It's a typical vibrant university campus, although if you've been to university in North America it'll probably be a little different, with the exception perhaps of people at Simon Fraser or UBC. It's a very green, leafy, landscaped campus, so it's certainly quite different to, say, the University of Toronto, one of those campuses that are more city-based. Wollongong is known for its surf beaches. We're just down the coast and there's something like 14 fantastic surf beaches there, but it's not all about the sand. There's actually great food and wine, good opportunities. I think the thing to remember also is that the weather is very temperate, and for a lot of you that's actually probably quite attractive. It rarely gets below, I'm thinking in Celsius, it rarely gets below 50 degrees, say, in Fahrenheit in the winter. It rarely gets above 90 in the summer. There are exceptions a couple of weeks at either end of the year, but it's temperate and comfortable all year round, which is pretty nice. The photographs here, the one on the left is North Beach in Wollongong, which is actually the closest one to the university. And on the right is the Grand Pacific Drive, which is actually just a beautiful bridge. It gives you an idea of the coastline. This is actually Mount Kira, which is directly behind the university. And so it's not just about surf, there's actually some beautiful bushland and rock climbing that can be done. And this is the campus. As I said, it's lovely, it's landscaped, and there's a lot of ducks. The University of Wollongong is very much into their ducks. If you've ever looked at their Facebook page or website, you'll see lots of mention of the ducks. But it is a lovely campus. In the bottom left-hand corner there, that building with the red pillars is the Graduate School of Medicine, and that's Mount Kira directly behind it that you can see. So let's drive down a little bit further south. About an hour south of Wollongong is the Shoalhaven campus. Shoalhaven is the region, and the major town in the region is Nowra. So Nowra has a population of around 35,000 people, so this is a small regional town. The entire region is a population of around 90,000 people, and that's with all the coastal villages. Shoalhaven campus is small. There's only around 500 students on the campus, so it's probably kind of the size of your high school. And I say we because I'm actually based on that campus most of the time. We're based just out of town and it backs onto the national park, so it's actually quite a beautiful environment. and I have some photos to show you as well. The Shoalhaven region is just slightly inland based on the river, so we actually have fishing and boating and things like that, but it's basically only about 10 minutes to the beach. And the beaches in Shoalhaven are slightly different to Wollongong. Wollongong is all about the surf. The beaches in Shoalhaven are not as good for surfing, but beautiful for diving. There's some more sheltered beaches, which I'll show you. It's all about the beach, isn't it? And again, great weather. So these are some of the areas around the region and the beautiful waterfalls on the escarpment. The beach down the bottom left, 7 Mile Beach, is actually almost halfway between Wollongong and Nowra, and it looks like that when you're driving down the highway. I couldn't actually not put in some dairy cattle. This is, interestingly, if you're thinking about Australia as being red and dry, this is a very not red and dry part of the world. The Shoalhaven region is actually quite green, and we tend to avoid most of the droughts, so it's actually very good dairy country. That photograph in the top left is the Shoalhaven River, and in fact that's taken from the hospital. The Shoalhaven Hospital is on the cliff at the edge of the river like that. But these are the kind of Shoalhaven beaches, great for diving, lots of whales, and that bottom one on the bottom left is in Jervis Bay, which is actually a World Heritage listed area and is absolutely stunning. And this is the Shoalhaven campus, which is backing onto the bush there, which means we have our own resident wildlife. So unlike Wollongong that has ducks, we have kangaroos. And we were actually discussing kangaroos earlier on here this morning. They're interesting critters. But those little fellows on the top right were having a graze, and you'll see them on campus afternoon and evening. They're not quite as cuddly as they look, but they add a little bit of authenticity. So looking a little bit about facilities, and in that photograph there resuscitating that patient is Benny Hill, who is a McGill University graduate actually, and Benny finished his, he graduated in December and has just started his internship in Wollongong actually. But the Canadians pop up everywhere. This is some photographs of our buildings, just to give you an idea of the facilities. We mentioned they were new purpose-built facilities. Our 2 buildings in Wollongong and Shoalhaven were built in 2007 for the sole purpose of the medical school, and that's actually quite exciting compared to a lot of the universities where you may have been in a lot of very old facilities. It means we've got state-of-the-art technology. Rolling on to that, what it also means is that between our Wollongong and Shoalhaven campuses, we link students so that we can lecture from wherever the expertise tends to be. And you can see in this photograph students from one campus or the other. But even in phase 3, where our students are scattered across New South Wales in hubs, they can actually link to each other from wherever they are, and we get all the students together so that they can share experiences and we can teach again from wherever the expertise is. Oh, and there's another Canadian, there's Patrick Tam. They're everywhere. Students learn and master their foundation skills in our clinical skills centres, and it allows our students to have a higher level of skill. Firstly, because our patient volunteers, and we have a photograph of them later on, are members of the community that allow themselves to be our guinea pigs. They help our students learn how to take a history, how to ask the questions correctly, how not to poke too hard or press too hard, all those things that traditionally the patients never told you. But also because of the technology, and here you can see the students are actually working on SimMan, and that we can do things that you'd never get to do on real patients. So in this case, any of you who have a clinical background, you can see the monitor above the student's head there. SimMan is very sick in this particular slide, and if the students don't do it right, SimMan is going to die. And they'll actually learn from experience of how to actually manage a situation that they may never see in real life. And all of this kind of simulation and practice will make them better doctors. So all of these things that they need to know how to do, they get to practice in a safe environment, be it putting on a plaster, scrubbing for theatre, disposing of sharps, all the things you can see in these photographs. Rather than hanging around the hospital and hope someone teaches it to them, we teach it explicitly long before they get to the hospital. I mentioned our volunteers earlier. We have about 140 volunteers and teaching associates across the campus, and these are people from the community that want to give back to the medical school. And they actually give up their time to share their experiences and to be patients for us. We're very, very grateful for that. But the fun stuff is the clinical placements, and I think that's important. Our students do a lot of high quality placements and a lot of exposure early. The 2 photographs on the right-hand side of the student in theatre and the student with a baby, both second-year students. So we've got second-year students in theatre, and in fact, Katie in the bottom photo had actually just delivered that baby. That was her first delivery. The photograph on the left of 2 of our students actually in a practice is during their extended phase 3 placement, and that's with their 2 doctors. And it just shows how much a a part of the team they've felt during that time. We've already talked about the fact that we have purpose-built buildings, which actually gives us great resources for students. And I think it's significant to know that our students have to do a lot of independent learning. Our students are adult learners, and we need to make sure that we have resources, both paper resources and electronic resources, to support them. The funny thing that we don't even notice because we're used to looking at it, but one of the staff here at GlobaLinks said as soon as they looked at the photo, is students in shorts and flip-flops. It's Australia, sitting at a medical school. So, you know, that's always good to notice. We just get used to it. Our students are learning in groups, and I think it's also really important to learn that because teamwork is vital for any medical school and for any graduate doctor. So our students do a lot of group work, and this is just a typical group of students working on a problem together. You can see they're in the tutorial room with laptops, with whiteboards, trying to problem solve a case together. And we've mentioned case-based learning, and this is where the group work really comes to the fore. And we actually carefully select the case-based learning groups to be a representation of the whole student body. So the groups are socially engineered to have a range of ages, gender, academic background, life experience, so that you can actually learn the most from people with a diversity. And I guess the other thing is to get involved. Our students are actually a very active group. Being a small group of students, there's always something happening, from sophisticated soirees in the bottom left to, I believe that's actually jelly wrestling in the top right, and I think there might be a pub crawl there too. I guess the thing is, with a small group of students, there's always something happening. But the other really interesting thing is our students are very socially conscious. So the amount of charitable work that's been going on, and in particular we have a charitable foundation the students have set up themselves based on supporting TB vaccination in an island in Vanuatu, which they have been working on for a series of years now. It's just really exciting to have students who addressing the inequalities of health isn't just what we say, it's what they actually live and breathe. So if you end up in our program and you have a wonderful time and you graduate, what does that mean? At the end of graduation, our graduates are eligible, international graduates are eligible to apply to stay in Australia for internship and specialty training. They're also eligible to apply for Canadian or US residencies, which requires applications and exams depending on the province or the state and the systems, but certainly are eligible for both. I think the important thing to know is both options are complex and they've got their own bureaucratic hurdles. It appears likely that in the future, international students may have difficulty in securing internship positions in Australia. We've been, we've been concerned about this for about 5 years now, and it's been something that we've been discussing with students for about 6 or 7 years. That we're very worried that there will be a time where it may not be possible for international students to stay in Australia after graduation, as there may not be any internship positions. Despite our predictions, as of yet it hasn't happened. All UOW graduates so far have either matched in Australia or their home countries, and so far so good on that regard. We've not had any problems. But I think it's important that you are completely aware and educate yourself on all the issues. One of the things is this doesn't just apply to Wollongong. This is a universal issue for all students who study at an Australian university. So if an Australian university doesn't mention it to you, it doesn't mean that it isn't a problem. It's a universal problem. So what we'd like to do is to give you some more information. And if you're looking at the University of Wollongong or any other New South Wales universities, HETI, which is the New South Wales Health Education and Training Institute, is the organisation that is responsible for internship allocations. It's important that you know that universities in Australia have nothing to do with residency. So we can't make promises and we can't actually help in that process. We do everything we can on your behalf, of course. But you need to actually look at this organisation. They have a lot of information on their website, so be sure to educate yourself. The bottom line is we don't know what the future holds, and we really hope that some of the initiatives put out by the Australian Medical Schools and by the Australian Medical Students Association will actually improve the situation in the future. So we're hoping no one in it is ever stuck in a situation where they don't match, but you need to know it is a possibility. So our admissions requirements, how do you get in? For us, our minimum admission requirements are GPA of 2.8, which is 5.0 on a 7-point scale. You need to have done GAMSAT, which is the Australian Entrance Exam, or MCAT, so a 50 or a 24. You need to complete an admissions portfolio for the GSM, and we'll talk about that. You need to have it completed or be in the final year of your bachelor's degree, but we don't mind what that's in, and there are no prerequisite subjects. And of course, you need an interview with us. Now, in saying that, if you are close to those numbers, if you've got a 2.6 GPA or you've got a 23 MCAT, please talk to the GlobaLinks team because we are interested in looking at your entire application. If you are an amazing student in other facets, then it may be that we will still consider your application. But don't assume that the 23 means you're necessarily out. It just means you'll need to be extra competitive elsewhere. But remember, we're looking at the whole person. We want to know more about you than just the numbers. Our applications open in January of the year prior to commencement. So for the 2015 cohort, for example, our applications are open now. We assess them on a rolling basis. So you can make applications directly to the GSM, but we actually encourage all our US and Canadian applicants to apply directly through GlobaLinks for all the reasons Andrew explained earlier, for the support, for the Bridging Cultures program, for the fact that they will actually process your application and there is no application fee. So, by all means, contact the team here. I mentioned the UOW admissions portfolio, and what that is it's a document which allows us to get an idea of what you've done outside of just your academic marks. We're really interested in your life experience. So leadership, teamwork, service ethic. This isn't just about volunteering or shadowing doctors. Have you flipped burgers in McDonald's? Have you played football? Do you speak a language? All the things that make you able to communicate with people, that gives you something other than just your science or humanities to talk about, is what will actually help you fit into a community and help you relate to patients. So tell us everything, but just remember we're looking at more than your marks. We really want to know who is a good fit for our program. We have talked about our focus on delivering healthcare to regional, rural and remote areas. If you graduate from the University of Wollongong Graduate School of Medicine, you don't have to be a rural doctor. But I would think that to come into our program, you'd want to be at least interested in learning more about rural communities. The vast majority of our students are going to spend a significant amount of time during their program in a rural community, so you've got to be okay with that. For our domestic students, we actually preferentially take students from a rural background. Now, it's not a requirement for international applicants, but I would recommend that if you're interested in applying, you at least do some reading around the issues and have an understanding of some of the issues with rural health, both to know if that's the kind of training you'd like to do, but also, because it's something that we're likely to discuss with you at interview. I guess the bottom line is there is nothing to stop you being a city doctor graduating from the University of Wollongong. You'll actually not be trained any less in that medicine, you'll actually be trained more because there are extra skills that are required in rural health. So if you are shortlisted from those applications process, our students are interviewed. And international applications are interviewed from April onwards. This year we're interviewing in Denver, Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and also we're interviewing via Skype for students that are too far away, either within North America or in other countries. And we'll also be interviewing as the year rolls on. We started interviewing today, actually. We've interviewed our first candidate a couple of hours ago, so we're quite excited about that. The interview is designed to assess your personal qualities. We already know your marks. If we've shortlisted you for interview, we already know you're fabulous. This is about how you think, how you feel, whether you're a good fit for us, and it allows you to decide whether we're a good fit for you. I've got a list here of some of the personal qualities that we value. These are the things we're looking for in our students at interview, and some of them in portfolio. And I'll let you read those. But what you can see is we're looking for a really well-rounded person, not just somebody who's clever. We obviously want you to be clever, but we want you to be more than that. I mentioned earlier about diversity, and I think it's important to show that we actually mean that. While the majority of our students are aged between, say, 22 and 25 years of age, our students actually do have a diversity of age. We have a relatively even gender balance. These are the 2014 figures, slightly more female than male students, but relatively even. But what's also interesting, particularly if you've come from the North American model where most students come from a pre-med or biological sciences background, we really do have a broad distribution of educational background. So in this slide, you can see our 2014 cohort. So our allied health professionals include our nurses, physiotherapists, kinesiologists, people like that. Our biomedical scientists are the usual kind of pre-health degrees. But you'll also see we have a number of engineers. Our physical scientists are things like our geologists and maths students, and our humanities students, which are students whose background may be in law, commerce, marketing, music. We've had a range of people in there, and you'll see that's actually a significant proportion of the degree. We need our students to know how to study. We need them to know how to think, and to have a baseline of science good enough to be able to pass the GAMSAT or MCAT. That's all. This is about graduate skills and attributes. It's not about how much biochemistry you know. So finally, once we've actually selected our students, we make offers based on the overall combination of all the admissions criteria. Now, we actually encourage students, for example, at the moment we're in the country for the next 2 weeks. And so if you were considering applying, and just say that you're in your final year of your degree, you can complete a portfolio but you haven't sat MCAT yet, you might be planning to sit it in June or July, we'd encourage you to apply now, because if your other criteria are good, we'll actually interview you here now while we're here. However, we can't make final offers until all the numbers come in. So certainly final offers are only made to applicants with complete applications. They are made on a rolling basis, however. So we do encourage you to apply as early as possible to have the best chance. We will continue generally until our international places are filled. However, as I mentioned earlier, it is a small program and we are selective, so sometimes we don't fill all our places if we don't find the right people. We generally make offers between about April and October. Once we're getting to October and November, it's pretty hard for an international student to get visas and funds and everything together, so we try not to do that to people because it's very hard for them to move that fast. So what we're looking for, the summary of this, we're actually looking for applicants who have the academic ability and the personal qualities to excel in our program and to perform as excellent medical practitioners. And I mention those two things separately because there are a lot of people that may be good doctors but won't be great Wollongong medical students. We're looking for a specific kind of student and we're hoping that that may well be you. So we're looking for 12 internationals. Could this be you? And there's Helen teaching our students again with one of our patient volunteers. So if you've got any more questions, apart from obviously we can talk about some now, but you can email us, or you can certainly visit our website which has a lot of information. I've put a link there direct to our international brochure which is on our website, but you can download it as a PDF, and of course you can contact GlobaLinks if need be. And they have lots of information here and have worked with us, so know a lot about our program. And we had to get one more surfing shot in. That's Newcastle, that's Wollongong Beach, and you can see the lighthouse. But really, really hope if we don't see you in the next 2 weeks, we hope to see you in Wollongong. I'm just going to hand back to Andrew, who's going to just close up for GlobaLinks, and then we'll open for questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Parker-Newland. I hope that you all have found this information useful, and if you have questions, which I imagine you do, I invite you to type them to us. That's our experience is that is the easiest method, and then I will happily read them aloud, and then we will address them one by one. So while you're typing your questions, we'll do a quick review. Any questions that you have about the actual medical program at University of Wollongong, you can address those to Professor Parker-Newland at the contact information provided. And questions or information regarding the application process can be directed to what you see on the screen, which is through GlobaLinks Learning Abroad. And it's a summary of our relationship. We assist in the application process, in the orientation process, helping you with your student visa and so forth, so that once we turn you over to the good hands at University of Wollongong, you will have your feet underneath you and be excited about the experience at hand. Likewise, we will be following up for those of you attending with an email, so we'll have a link to this webinar, so if you wish to review it again, it will be posted on our website. If you prefer to ask questions too in a more controlled setting through email, we are happy to address those. And then likewise, you'll see our toll-free number for both Canadian and American students. We are on Mountain Standard, or Mountain Daylight Time, I should say, so Mountain Time Zone 8 to 5. As I don't see any questions being populated, I think we're going to go ahead and thank you very much for your attendance. Again, please feel free to be in touch with us if you have any questions. And if you are anywhere close to Denver, Boulder, Colorado, Vancouver, Montreal, Ontario, or Toronto in the coming couple of weeks, it would be Professor Parker-Newland's distinct pleasure to be able to meet with you, both to ask questions about the application process, or if you're far enough along to be able to do an interview for this remarkable program. Thank you very much for attending today, and best wishes for the end of the semester and for your applications to medical school.